Once upon a time, in the quiet middle-class neighborhood of Crestwood Estates, the sound of birds singing on a Monday morning was broken by something far darker, something that would shake a family, a community, and even the law to its knees. Grace, a 54-year-old widow and a mother of one, had always been a quiet woman, strong, prayerful, and respected. People called her Mother Peace in church because she never raised her voice and was always first to say it is well, no matter what happened. But that morning she changed, and it all started with a single knock. Grace had gone to her daughter's house unannounced. Her only child, Emily, 27 years old, had been married to Daniel's Jacob for 2 years now. On the outside, Daniel looked like the perfect man, educated, handsome, and always smiling in public. A rising banker with a shiny car and polished shoes, but behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Grace stood outside the door and knocked gently. No answer. She knocked again, still nothing. Her motherly instinct kicked in. The house was unusually quiet, not even the sound of the TV or kitchen utensils. Then she heard it, just for a second, a faint cry, so soft, so broken. Emily? No response. Grace's hands trembled as she searched for the spare key she always carried. She had begged her daughter for it 6 months ago, just in case, she had said. She turned the key slowly and pushed the door open. The smell hit her first. Cold shivers ran down her spine. Then she saw her daughter. Emily was on the floor of the living room, lying on her side. Her white nightgown soaked in blood from her mouth. Her left eye was swollen shut. Her lips busted open. Her hands clutched the edge of the couch like she was trying to hold on to something that had already gone. Grace froze. She could barely breathe. Her eyes scanned the room. There were shards of broken wine bottle on the floor. A cracked photo frame of their wedding picture lay beside it. Emily, Grace whispered. Emily opened her eyes slowly, and when she saw her mother, she began to cry silently, like her soul was weeping. Grace rushed over, lifted her daughter gently, her hands shaking as she held her. Who did this to you? What happened? She asked, even though her heart already knew the answer. Emily didn't speak. She only shook her head and cried harder. Grace's heart broke into pieces, seeing her old daughter in such mess. Then she had a flush from the bathroom. Daniel was still inside the house. The door creaked open and Daniel stepped out, wiping his hands with a towel, whistling as if nothing had happened. He stopped when he saw them. Oh, hi, Mama, he said casually. You should have called before coming. Madam Grace landed a hot slap on Daniel's face. She didn't know when her hand rose and the slap echoed in the room like a gunshot. Daniel staggered slightly, shocked. What did you do to my daughter? She screamed. He blinked, then dropped the towel and rolled his eyes. Mama, please don't start. She's my wife. We had a misunderstanding, that's all. Misunderstanding? Look at her face. You almost killed her. Daniel laughed under his breath. She pushed me first. You should have asked what she did to me. Emily's voice came out, faint but clear. He beat me because I said I was leaving. Daniel turned to her sharply. You want to say that in front of your mother now? You want to lie again? Grace rose to her feet, eyes blazing with anger. You dare raise your hand on my child and then justify it. You're a coward, Daniel, a weak man. Daniel smirked proudly. You don't live here, ma. You don't know what goes on between us. Stay out of it. That was the moment something inside Grace snapped. Everything went red. She didn't think. She didn't plan. All she saw was her daughter's blood and Daniel's smirk. She looked around and grabbed the heavy flower vase on the table. Before Daniel could move, she smashed it across his head. He stumbled back. Blood gushed from his forehead. He slipped and fell, hitting his head on the tiled floor. He stopped moving. Emily screamed. Grace dropped the vase. Her chest was pounding. What had she done? 3 hours later, Grace was in handcuffs. Daniel didn't die, but he had a cracked skull and serious concussions. The neighbors called the police after hearing the screams. Emily tried to explain, tried to defend her mother, but it was too late. Grace sat silently at the back of the police van, staring at her blood-stained hands. Her pastor always said that vengeance is the Lord's, but this had come from her bones. As the police drove off with Grace, neighbors gathered outside, whispering, "That's Grace now, the prayer woman. She nearly killed her son-in-law, but why would she do that?" An old woman in wrapper said quietly, "Because sometimes even peace has a breaking point." As the police drove away with Grace, Emily stood frozen at the doorway, trembling like a soaked leaf. Her nightgown clung to her skin, torn at the sleeves. Her lips were swollen and her eyes burning from tears. In front of her, Daniel lay limp in the arms of two paramedics, blood dripping from the side of his head like a broken tap. His skin looked paler now. His mouth was half open. The smell of iron, thick hot blood filled the air. "Madam, we have to take him now," one of the medics said sharply, hoisting Daniel onto the stretcher. Emily nodded. They wheeled Daniel away as the siren wailed off into the distance, and then she was alone. Emily's knees buckled as she sat on the cold floor tiles. She was in a daze. Where would she go? Her mother, the only family she had left, had just been arrested. Her husband, the man she once vowed to stand by, was in the hospital, maybe dying. She didn't want Grace in a cell. She didn't want Daniel dead. She didn't want any of this. Blood still on her face, she whispered into the silence, "God, what am I going to do now? What have I done?" She called herself up and wept bitterly, rocking back and forth. If Daniel dies, they will say I planned this, that I brought my mother to kill him. And she was right, because Daniel's family was not just any family. His mother, Mrs. Priscilla Jacobs, was not just rich, she was influential, a well-known minister of lands and properties. She was feared even in government circles. Emily knew that silence would bury her, but lies might buy her time. So she rose, weak and shivering, limping to the bedroom. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She dialed her mother-in-law's number, and it rang twice. "Hello, good afternoon, ma." Emily started, trying to sound calm. "Emily, your voice doesn't sound right. What's the matter?" Emily choked back a sob. "Ma, Daniel had a small accident. He was coming out of the bathroom and he slipped and hit his head on the bathtub." There was a pause. Emily continued, forcing the lie out like a dying breath. "He went unconscious. They've taken him to St. Margaret's Hospital now. I just thought you should know." Priscilla's voice turned cold. "Which hospital again?" "St. Margaret's by Eastern Avenue." "Okay, I'm on my way." Emily hung up and dropped the phone. Her hand still vibrated. She just lied to cover for her mother. But inside, a storm was building and she could already feel the storm coming. She turned to walk out, but stopped midway. Something told her, "Take pictures, document everything in case this light turns on you." Emily picked up her phone again, flipping the camera, and walked slowly around the room, captured the shattered photo frame, the broken vase, the blood on the floor, her own bruised face in the mirror. Her face stared back at her, wounded, shaking and distant. Without another word, she staggered out of the house and drove herself to St. Teresa's Clinic, the nearest emergency hospitals, where she would treat her wounds. Exactly 2 hours later, a black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon rolled up outside Daniel's compound. Inside, Priscilla Jacobs, dressed in silk green lace, gold earrings dangling, stepped out with her driver. She was calm, but beneath her designer handbag and polished nails was a volcano of suspicion. She walked to the gate, locked. She knocked hard. "Hello?" No answer. The street was quiet. She dialed Emily's number and it was switched off. She knocked again, this time angrier. Just as she was about to storm back into her car, a voice called from behind. "Auntie, good afternoon, oh." It was Ose, a young woman who lived 3 houses away. Pretty, slim, and secretly obsessed with Daniel. Priscilla turned. "Good afternoon, my dear. Do you know where Emily is?" Ose smiled, but her eyes glittered with malice. "Oh, madam, you haven't heard what happened?" Priscilla frowned. "Heard what?" The young woman, Ose, took a step closer, lowering her voice like she was about to share a dark secret. "That woman you call your daughter-in-law caused serious problem today, oh." Priscilla's face tightened. "Talk straight. What happened?" Ose nodded eagerly. "I'm not sure how it started, ma, but I heard she and her husband had a small argument. But instead of handling it like a normal wife, she went and called her mother to come and fight her battles. And that woman, Emily's mother, came and hit your son on the head with something heavy. I don't know if it was teak or iron, but she beat him until he passed out. Priscilla's eyes widened in shock. What? I'm telling you the truth, madam. You can ask anyone around. As we speak, her mother is at the police station and your son is in the hospital fighting for his life. It's a very serious case, ma. Priscilla staggered back in anger. She told me it was an accident. Ose folded her arms and gave a fake innocent smile. An accident. Madam, if I didn't respect you, I would tell you what I really think of her. But anyway, you can ask your security guard. He saw everything. Just then, Priscilla's driver stepped out of the car. Ma, should I try and check the neighbors? No, she snapped. We're going to the hospital now. She entered the car, her fingers trembling around her phone, and then she called someone. A deep voice answered. Hello, Minister. I need information. I want everything on Emily and her mother, their background, their finances, their lives, every single detail, immediately. Yes, ma'am. Priscilla hung up, her eyes fixed ahead. If they try to bury my son, I will bury their entire bloodline. Back at the police station, Grace sat in the corner of the holding cell. Her gown was torn, her scarf soaked with tears. She hadn't spoken in an hour. All she could do was whisper her daughter's name over and over. Then a female officer opened the gate. You have a visitor, she said. Grace stood slowly, and there behind the glass window was a young lawyer holding a file. Mrs. Grace Miller, she asked gently, and Grace nodded. I've been sent by someone you don't know, but she says this case might be bigger than it looks. Grace blinked. Who? The lawyer leaned close and whispered, Daniel has secrets and the truth is leaking already. At the hospital, Daniel opened his eyes slowly, his mother by his bedside. She bent down and whispered, Don't worry, my son, I'll deal with her. You just rest. But Daniel doesn't answer. Instead, a tear drops from his eye. The walls of St. Margaret's Hospital echoed with urgency. Doctors rushed in white coats, nurses wheeled carts through the corridors, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. But all Mrs. Jacob Priscilla could hear was the thud of her heels against the tile floor and the pounding of her own heart. Her son Daniel was inside the operating theater. The doctor's words still rang in her ears. Madam, your son is undergoing emergency surgery. He suffered a fractured skull. We're doing our best, but time is critical. She had collapsed into a bench, but now she was pacing the hallway like a caged lioness. Her personal bodyguard stood quiet nearby. Emily, that witch, that cursed daughter of nobody, she and her demon of a mother did this to my son. If I see her, if I so much as sees her shadow, I swear I will shred her to pieces. She clutched her designer scarf tighter, muttering prayers under her breath, but they were not holy. They were vengeful. Daniel was wheeled out 30 minutes later, unconscious, pale, stitched and bandaged across the head. Tubes ran across his nose and arms. Machines beeped with every heartbeat. My son. Oh, my only child, my baby. Look what they've done to you. Tears poured freely as she held his limp hand. I will not rest, Daniel, I promise you. Your enemies will beg me to stop. Wearing a fresh white blouse and long skirts, with her face now clean but her eyes still purple and swollen, Emily stepped gently into the hospital corridor. Her 5-year-old son, Junior, was by her side, shaking her hand. She had treated her injuries quietly at a nearby clinic and then rushed to Junior's school. She couldn't leave her child out of her sight, not now. Mommy, is Daddy okay? Junior asked innocently. Emily held his hand tighter. He's getting better, baby. He's strong. But the moment Priscilla saw her, the hallway turned into a war zone. You! She screamed, pointing her finger. How dare you show your face here, after what you and your murderer of a mother did to my son? Madam, please calm down. A nurse tried to step in, but Priscilla had already charged forward. Don't touch me. This devil came to finish what she started. She has the audacity to come here with the child, to pretend she cares. Emily, you are a curse. You should have never entered my family. Emily was stunned, frozen. I came to see my husband and my son needs to see his father. You have no husband, not anymore, Priscilla shouted. Then without warning, Priscilla bent down, snatched Junior away from Emily's side and dragged him behind her. "Junior!" Emily screamed. "Leave my son alone." "Your son. This is my blood, my son's only son. If you want to see him again, go to court." And just like that, with the security men shielding her, Priscilla marched out of the hospital with Junior, leaving Emily crying on the cold floor of the corridor. That evening, Emily returned home to find the house empty. No Junior, no peace. Only a letter shoved under the door by a courier. She opened it with shaking hands. "You are hereby summoned to appear before the High Court of Charges, inciting attempted murder against Daniel Jacobs. Failure to appear will result in immediate arrest. From the Office of the Attorney General, backed by the Minister of Land and Property." Emily collapsed onto the chair. Tears streamed down her face. They were coming for her too. Meanwhile, in her cold cell, Grace sat on a bench, clutching a worn Bible. A female officer approached. "Someone sent you this," she said, handing Grace a folded newspaper. Grace opened it, and on the front page, the headline read, "Mother-in-law from hell. Woman smashes son-in-law's skull during domestic disputes." Below was a photo of Grace in handcuffs and a smaller one of Daniel in the hospital bed. The article claimed she had brutally attacked a respected banker after her daughter staged a fake abuse scene. "Lies!" Grace shouted. "They are twisting everything." Her cellmate, a round woman with tribal marks, glanced over. "Now rich people matter be this. Them go use you clean floor." Grace stared at the wall, her heart breaking. The next morning, 2 men in black suits arrived at Emily's door. They handed her another letter, this time from Priscilla's private legal team. Inside it said, "Testify in court that your mother came to your house with the intention to harm Daniel. Say she planned it. Say you were unaware and you regret calling her. If you do this, you will regain custody of your son immediately. Failure to comply will result in full custody of Junior revoked, eviction from the family house, confiscation of your mother's only land left to no matter, permanent blacklisting from any inheritance or legal claims." Emily trembled. "This is wickedness," she whispered. Then the phone rang. She picked. It was Priscilla, her mother-in-law. Her voice was cold, like eyes wrapped in velvet. "Emily, my dear, I know this is hard for you, but you brought this upon yourself. And now, your mother must face the consequences of her actions, unless you decide to do the right thing." Emily's voice cracked. "Please, let me see my son." "Testify first, then we'll see," Priscilla said and hung up the call. The following week, a day before the court day, Mrs. Priscilla returned to her son's house and knocked at Ose's gate. She told Ose that Emily was winning the case and had presented a lot of evidence in court. She asked if she would be willing to testify as a witness, since she claimed to have seen everything that happened between the couple. Ose became nervous because she knew she had fabricated lies against Emily. But then she thought to herself, "This family is rich. This might be my only chance to get close to Daniel. If I support the mother, maybe I can marry him. I've always had eyes for Daniel, and if he marries me, I'm sure he will treat me better and never beat me." So without hesitation, Ose agreed to testify falsely in court. The next day was the court day. Emily stood outside the courthouse in plain black gown, her stomach tight and her heart breaking. Inside, her mother sat in the defendant's box, frail, pale but still proud. Their eyes met for the first time that morning, and so much emotion passed between them. A bailiff came forward and called out, "Next witness, Emily Jacobs, please come to the stand." She rose slowly. Each step towards the witness box felt like a death sentence. Would she betray her mother to save her son, or would she stand for truth and lose the only child she had? The courtroom was filled with whispers, eyes darted, phones clicked. Reporters lined the back row like vultures. Everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. The case had gained public attention. A mother accused of nearly killing her son-in-law, a wife caught in the middle, a powerful mother-in-law fueling the fire with wealth and threats. Emily stood at the witness stand. Her hands trembled slightly as she held onto the wooden railing. The judge looked up from his notes and the clerk prepared to take up her testimony. Across the room, seated in a royal purple lace gown, was Mrs. Priscilla Jacobs. The anger in Priscilla's eyes could burn a hole through steel. She sat upright, lips pursed, watching Emily with cold contempt. Her face said one thing: "If you dare speak against me, I will destroy you." Emily could feel the mother-in-law's rage, but her heart was elsewhere. It was with her mother, Grace. Emily turned slightly and looked towards the right side of the courtroom. There, behind a glass panel, surrounded by police officers, sat her mother. She wore a faded blue prison gown. Her hands were cuffed tightly on her lap, yet her eyes held no shame, only peace. When their eyes met, Emily's chest tightened. A flash of memories rushed into her head. It was a rainy Thursday evening, almost 2 years ago. Emily had just gotten off the phone with Daniel. He had shouted at her again for something small. She sat on the floor of her mother's house, crying. Grace had walked in quietly, sat beside her and held her close. "Why do you allow him to speak to you like that?" Grace asked gently. Emily wiped her tears. "He's just angry. It's work stress." "Every day? Is it work stress that made him break your phone last week? Or the day he pushed you and you said sorry after?" Emily looked away. "My daughter, love is not supposed to hurt. You are not a punching bag. You are not a slave or a property." "Mama, he loves me," Emily whispered. Grace shook her head. "No, he controls you. There's a difference." There was a long silence. "Emily, listen to me. If you go ahead and marry that man, you will shed tears I won't be able to stop. I have prayed. I've seen it in dreams. That man will break you." But Emily looked away. "Mama, I'm a grown woman. I've made my choice." She was blinded by the fancy wedding, the shiny ring, and the man in suit with a big car. Grace stood up slowly, wiped her hands on her wrapper and said, "Then may God help you." Now, standing in the courtroom with the weight of that memory pressing on her chest, Emily turned back towards the judge. Her voice shook, but she spoke. "Your Honor," she began, "I came here today because I owe the truth to my mother. She warned me. She begged me not to marry Daniel, but I didn't listen. I thought I was in love. I thought I could change him, but I was wrong." She opened her bag slowly and brought out a thick brown envelope. She handed it to the court officer. Inside are pictures of injuries I've suffered in that marriage. Some from that day, some from months before. I've also added a video I recorded when Daniel was threatening me. I was too scared to speak up then, but not anymore. The judge examined the documents. The video was played quietly for the court. Daniel's voice could be heard screaming, slamming doors and hurling insults. The photos showed bruises, swollen lips, and punch marks. The courtroom went silent. Emily continued. "That morning, I called my mother because I was afraid. I had nowhere else to turn. Daniel was angry. He hit me. And when my mother arrived, she didn't come to attack anyone. She came to protect me. What happened next was never planned. She hit him in defense of my life." Emily then brought out a second set of documents. "These are letters I received from my mother-in-law. Threats, warnings, promises that if I didn't testify against my own mother, I would lose everything." Priscilla stood up sharply and shouted, "Lies!" The judge banged his gavel. "Madam, sit down or leave the courtroom." Emily continued. "She took my child, she took my home, and she took my peace, but she will not take my truth." The courtroom murmured. The judge turned to Priscilla's lawyers. "Do you have any witness or evidence to support your counterclaim?" One of the lawyers stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. We have a neighbor who witnessed the event." The door opened and Ose walked in, dressed in a pink suit with a nervous smile. She took the stand. "Yes, I saw everything. Emily and her mother planned it. They were always rude to Daniel. Emily would insult him, sometimes in front of people. That day, she shouted and called her mother to come and teach him a lesson." Emily's mouth fell open. "That's a lie." The judge turned and asked Ose, "Miss Ose, do you have any proof of these claims? Video, audio, text messages?" Ose stammered. "No, I just saw it from my window." Emily stood. "Your Honor, This same woman had been going after my husband. She told my husband that she had feelings for him. She sent him messages, and I have copies of those messages. Gasps filled the courtroom. Emily brought out the screenshot of her messages she had taken from her husband's phone. The judge reviewed them slowly. Then he looked up. This court has reviewed both sides. The evidence presented by the defendant is consistent, supported, and documented. The accuser had failed to bring credible or material evidence to support the claim of attempted murder. Therefore, this court hereby declares Grace Miller not guilty and orders her immediate release. Cheers broke out in the courtroom. Grace broke down in tears. Emily ran to her mother and they hugged tightly, the officer stepping aside. But outside, darkness waited. Outside the courthouse, Priscilla stood near her car, her arms folded. Emily walked past with Grace. Just as she reached the car park, Priscilla blocked her. So you had the guts to lie in court with all your fake evidence. I told the truth, Emily said, her voice calm. Priscilla leaned closer. You will regret this. I promise you I will make sure you sleep on the street and you will never see your son again. Grace stepped forward. You've done enough damage. Let us go. Priscilla hissed and entered her car, but the fire was far from over. 2 days later, Emily returned to the house she once lived in. She knocked on the gate. I came for my son, she said, but the security guard was adamant. Then Priscilla appeared behind them. You have no right here. This is my house, and my grandson stays with me. You can't do this, Emily cried. Priscilla raised her hand, and just like that, 2 bouncers grabbed Emily and dragged her across the pavement. She screamed, fought, and kicked. They threw her to the ground. She wept bitterly. I want my son, Junior, she kept screaming, but the gate slammed shut. She lay on the ground, bruised and broken, and she wiped her tears and whispered, evil always returns to the one who sends it. Priscilla, this is not the end. After Emily was denied access to her son by her mother-in-law and was thrown out of her husband's home, she returned to her apartment in tears. Her face was swollen, her body bruised, and her heart shattered. She fell into her mother's arm, and Grace held her tightly. Don't cry, my daughter, Grace said softly. No one takes a child from the mother forever. You will get your son back, I promise you that. Meanwhile, at Daniel's house, Ose had started to get close to Mrs. Priscilla. She now lived in the house permanently to ensure Emily never had the chance to return. Every morning, she would wake up early, clean the house from top to bottom. She even scrubbed the GP tank in the backyard. She went as far as cleaning Daniel's and Emily's old bedroom. Despite the house having domestic staff, Ose insisted on doing everything herself. She cooked all the meals, washed the clothes, and polished the floors just to prove that she was a wife material. Her goal was clear: to win Priscilla over and take Emily's place in the family. Eventually, her efforts began to pay off. One morning, after Ose had finished her chores, Mrs. Priscilla called her. Ose, I'm going to the hospital to see my son. I want you to come with me. I'd like to introduce you to him properly. That marriage with Emily is over. It is time he meets someone better. Ose could not contain her joy. She rushed back home, smiling uncontrollably, dancing around her room. She kept saying to herself, it's finally happening. That evening, they went to the hospital together. Daniel was lying in bed, his head still wrapped in bandages. When he saw his mother, he smiled weakly. Then his eyes caught sight of Ose. He looked at his mother and asked, why is she here? Mrs. Priscilla replied, her name is Ose. She's the one who testified for you in court. She has been taking good care of me at home. She's a good girl. Daniel nodded slowly. He knew exactly who Ose was. She had collected his number months ago, even while he was still married to Emily. They had been texting secretly. He knew that she always had eyes for him, but now that she was close to his mother, he realized she had come to finish what she started. Daniel knew that if he rejected her, she could easily expose his secrets, including the fact that he had been sleeping with her during his marriage to Emily, so he decided to play along and pretended to like her. In no time, Daniel and Ose began dating officially. Emily, on the other hand, was doing everything possible to get her son back. Fortunately for her, one of her loyal domestic staff, a young lady named Jane, was still working in Daniel's house. Emily would call Jane from time to time to ask about her son. Jane would update her and even secretly put Junior on video calls to speak with his mother behind Mrs. Priscilla's back. One day, Jane called with important information. "Madam, they've changed Junior's school. Tomorrow is his first day. I will be taking him to school." She continued, "When I drop him off, I'll tell the teacher that someone else will be picking him up after school. Junior will recognize you immediately. That's your chance to get him." Emily was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Jane, God bless you so much," she said with tears in her eyes. Jane was doing this because she knew Emily had been kind to her. She had witnessed the abuse Emily endured, and on the day of the incident, she had only stepped out briefly to get groceries and returned to chaos. The next day at 2 p.m., Emily waited quietly at Junior's new school. When Junior saw her from afar, he screamed, "Mommy!" and ran into her arms. Emily cried as she held her son tight. The teacher, seeing the connection between them, understood immediately and allowed Emily to take him home. Grace was waiting in a car down the road. The moment Emily entered with her son, they drove away quickly. That night, when Priscilla returned from a government trip, she was told that Junior had not returned from school. Panic struck her immediately. She called the school and they confirmed that Junior had been picked up by his mother. She rushed to Emily's apartment only to find the house empty. No Emily, no Junior, no Grace. She screamed in anger. Priscilla called every contact she had. She paid people to search the city, but there was no sign of them. What she didn't know was that Emily, Grace, and Junior had already crossed the border and relocated to a neighboring country, Benin Republic. They rented a small apartment and started a new life in peace. Back in Nigeria, Ose and Daniel's relationship grew quickly. Mrs. Priscilla was more than happy to push them into marriage. She planned the wedding and spent millions on it. After the lavish celebration, she gifted them a big house and moved them in immediately. But the happiness did not last. Daniel did not love Ose. In fact, he hated her. He only stayed with her because she knew too much and had threatened to expose his secrets. Soon, Daniel's violent habits returned. He began to beat Ose regularly. He would come home drunk, shout at her and beat her until she fainted. Ose had now become the new punching bag. Frustrated and angry, she decided to teach Daniel a lesson. She went to a group of street boys and paid them heavily. She gave them Daniel's car details and told them where he would pass on his way home. She ordered them not to kill him but to break him and leave him helpless. That night, Daniel was driving home. The street was quiet. Suddenly, he saw big stones blocking the road. He stepped out from his car to remove the stone, confused and nervous, and from the bushes, the boys emerged with sticks and iron rods. They beat him mercilessly. They broke his ribs, smashed his leg, and left him screaming in the middle of the road. He managed to crawl back to his car and called Ose for help. "I've been attacked. Please help me." Ose laughed on the phone and said, "You think I'm Emily? You married the wrong woman." She hung up. Later that night, she picked him up and took him to the hospital. Daniel was diagnosed with multiple leg fractures. The doctors told him he would never be able to walk again. He was now disabled, bound to a wheelchair for life. After pretending to take care of him for a few days, Ose disappeared. She stole the document for the house Priscilla had given them and sold it. Daniel was left alone. He called Ose, but her line was switched off. He began to cry daily. He tried reaching Emily, but her number had been changed. Her social media was gone. She had vanished completely. He moved back into his mother's house, full of shame, regret, and guilt. His mother, Priscilla, who had once blamed Emily for everything, now saw the truth about her son. She was heartbroken and angry, but it was too late. Daniel was left with nothing. No wife, no son, no home, and no legs. In Benin Republic, Emily started a fresh life. She met a man named Victor, gentle and kind-hearted electrician. He fell in love with her slowly and deeply. He accepted her son, Junior, and treated Grace like his own mother. After a year of dating, they got married quietly. Victor never raised his voice or his hand. He gave Emily the love, peace, and respect she had never known. Junior started calling Victor Daddy. Emily had finally found happiness. The moral lesson of this story reminds us to never ignore red flags in a relationship. Power and wealth may protect evil for a while, but truth always prevails. A mother's love cannot be erased. What you sow is what you will surely reap. Love is not pain, and real love does not hurt.